miracle at UGT. Are you ready for a miracle with UGT? Oh, radio is here for you. We're gonna learn something new. Oh, are you ready for a miracle at UGT?
Jesus went onto the well and made the water wine. Raised the Lazarus from the dead, restored sight to the blind. Jesus ran the Galilee, he walked across the sea. He said, greater than this you shall do. We gave power to you and me. I want to know. Are you ready for a miracle? I want to know. Are you ready for a miracle?
For you and me.
Are you ready?
Ready.
Are you ready?
Yeah. Ready. Woo. Are you ready for a miracle with you and me?
Jesus taught the lame to walk, destroyed the devil's hand. Healed the leper, fed 5,000 with just one command. He said, "Do as he led them here." He told the multitude, and blessed be the pure of heart, for they shall see the truth. I want to know. Are you ready for a miracle? I want to know. Miracle. Are you ready? Are you ready? Are you ready?
Blessed be the ones who mourn, for they shall find their peace. Blessed be the ones who search, blessed be the meek. Blessed be the innocent, for they shall all be free. Blessed be the miracle, the day for you and me.
Are you ready for a miracle? Yeah. Are you ready for a miracle? Are you ready? Are you ready? Are you ready? Are you
Are you ready for a miracle? It is I, the underground professor, can't get Periscope to do what I think it's supposed to be doing. I think that's working now. I am the underground professor coming at you almost live high atop a double rainbow, sharing it with the Agadorable himself, the unpleasant blind guy, on this show, The Way Back Part 3. And so, without further ado, let me see if I can get his mic on without losing control of my show, as usually happens. It's hot, and I've still got control, so let's see if Ag's there. Ag.
It's hot, you're hot, I'm hot.
It's in the 90s in October, man. It's just not right.
Oh, well, it's probably in the 50s up here.
Oh, is it? Yeah.
Yeah. It's beautiful up here, Prof. Really loving it. I'm conflicted today, though. I have to tell you, I'm conflicted today. You move to a new place and you support the hometown team. You know, it's just the polite thing to do. So I support the New England Patriots, but right now they're playing the Cowboys, and that's the team of my youth, as you would put it. So I'm very conflicted today. I'm going to be happy whoever wins, and I'm going to be kind of sad whoever loses. You know?
Yeah. Well, I made it to the half, so I don't know what's going on since. But yeah, we'll see.
Yeah. All I can say is it looks like the Pats would be scoring a lot more, but Dallas defense has been kind of stymieing Tom Brady a little bit. So we'll see what happens with that game. I've got the television turned off so I can get some good high quality sound here. But Yeah.
Well, our defense has been beaten up on Brady like an ex-wife, so it's it's been pretty brutal because we got our wife beater back online at I can't remember his name now, Hardy or something like that.
Yeah.
Look at all these felons. I mean, how about people that just played football and were decent citizens? Every one of them have got some kind of criminal charge on them. I don't even know how they can legally play football. How is it that you can associate with known felons? And that means you can't even huddle up. So I don't know.
Well, yeah. I mean, you would think they, you have to wonder, do they get a special dispensation from a judge? Because they because they have to play in a profession where there's a lot of other ex-criminals, or how does that work?
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you, it works differently than people like you and I.
Oh, definitely, yeah.
Yep.
You and I would be back in our respective state custody in a heartbeat if we did something like that.
Oh goodness, I got into custody and arrested when I didn't do anything like that. So yeah, you better believe it. Yeah,
there you go.
I get kind of angry over these wife beating things. If they're legitimate, then that makes me mad. But
right.
What surprised me, of course, this isn't this show, but there's more female abuse on males than there are males on females. In this country, it's something we ignore and we don't want to admit because it goes against the template of feminism. But that's coming up on this show next week, maybe Tuesday or Thursday.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
And then
sounds good.
Monday will be a big show. I left a stinker on my last show. I got something wrong. I really desperately want to claim that I did it on purpose to get everybody going. Part of it I did, but I actually got a fact wrong, and so I'm going to have to open my Monday show. I'm not going to do it with a guest because that's just too embarrassing. But Monday's show is going to be what I got wrong and what I set up to see if anybody else would complain about. And I had only one person call me on the carpet. So I was a little disappointed. I didn't get like 1,000 emails saying, what kind of moron are you? But,
I understand.
Yep. So anyway, that'll be Monday's show. I'm getting hearts on being a moron. So hey, thanks. That's my kind of audience. And today's show is the Way Back with Agador Bull himself, the unpleasant blind guy. And this is part 3, the end, I believe, right? So.
Yep. This is the end of it.
So we've made it through the stretch. So, how do you want to play? You want me to play your bit and then talk, or you want to talk and then play the bit, or how do you want to work this?
Well, I'll preface it a little bit. For those who have heard the show before, when I did it a couple of years ago, it'll start out. Part 3 will start out with stuff you haven't heard before, because I wanted to add some things. I wanted to fill in the corners, as I say, like as the hobbits do when they're having a celebration. There were a few things that I didn't say in a couple of years ago that I wanted to say. This will be the finished product, and I'll use this every year around this time because as long as I'm able, and that's a help. This will be this is a work of my life, and it may be the most important thing I ever do. It certainly, at this point, is the biggest thing I've ever done. So if you've heard this before, this will be some new stuff that you haven't heard. And by the way, thank you to Kel Fritzy of Red Fox Radio for helping me. We kind of went back and cleaned up your show from last Sunday, Prof. So everybody gets to hear the conversation you and I had on part 2. So I encourage people to go back and listen to that show.
Well, every good boxer has a cut man in their corner, and Kel's our cut man.
Oh, yep. Amen to that. Yeah. She is first class, and I want to thank her for helping out, and Prof, again, I want to thank you for allowing me to do all this. But without
Kel says it's a great series, Dave. Not mentioning my role in all this, but that's okay. I'm going to have to go back and listen to how she recut it because I might not even be in it anymore.
No. I was the one that did all the cutting and all that stuff. So I really wanted to get that conversation in with you. This has been a great adjunct to it, and you added something to it. You added something to the entire concept, which as you listen, as folks listen to part 3, you'll see that this is exactly what I said to do. You did what I said to do before I said to do it. So with that, Prof, if you want to go ahead and play the bit, then we'll talk about it after.
That's me, always coloring out of the lines. I'm that guy that gets caught when you go take a test and the proctor says, no one lift their pencil or open the page, and I'm like on page 3 already. So, okay, here we go. Agador's The Way Back, Part 3.
Stand by for action.
Thanks for joining me. My name is Dave Miller. I am the Unpleasant Blind Guy. In part 2 of this series, I talked about strategies and tactics that teachers of and preservers of the knowledge base of personal liberty are going to have to use. And I want to expand on that a little more. Now, I said in part 2 that, for instance, one of the things that people are going to have to do is be diverse and individualistic in their choices of things to preserve. I made some suggestions earlier, but none of this is cast in stone. You can, and I think, for instance, should, add the Magna Carta, the writings of John Locke, that's John Locke, the Petition of Right of 1628, the English Bill of Rights of 1688, the United States Articles of Confederation, the Anti-Federalist Papers, and the writings of Frederick Bastiat to the list. Use the imagination and resources that you have. Teach with and preserve what you can. When the day comes that the new patriots begin to form the next republic, that will ensure that there will be a large body of material for those framers yet unborn to study. Now, it might also be wise to include the Bible and or other holy writings in with your Freedom Box or Liberty Box or whatever you choose to call it. I mention this, though many of you probably already have that notion, because in the 2 years since the initial recording of this program, the Islamization of the world has been accelerated greatly by people like the current President of the United States, Barack Hussein Obama. That future generation, yet unborn, that is going to have to set up a new republic could well be living in a world where any writing, any teaching, anything that is not Islamic will be proscribed, destroyed on discovery, and its owners penalized with jail time or possibly even death. Let's make no mistake here, people. This is not playing around. As governments not just in the United States of America, but elsewhere become more and more totalitarian, their methods for information control are going to become more and more harsh. Succeeding generations of defenders of personal liberty are going to have to be stronger, and they're going to have to be smarter. I spoke earlier of how some of the teachers and preservers are going to have to go silent so that they will not be detected. You could call that the way of the snake. A snake is a delicate creature that can easily be crushed. So often it must be silent, move carefully, and strike only when the time is right. But there is another lesson that will have to be learned in the post-individual liberty world that will have to be applied in some cases so that teaching and preservation of knowledge can continue. If some being silent and pretending to go along with whatever administration is in charge at the time is the way of the snake, some others will have to practice the way of the chameleon. Along the line between the making of this recording and the new republic will be a stretch of indeterminate time where leftists and Islamo-fascists will be in charge. Now, thugs like this need to know that they have their boots on the necks of the people. They need wins in order to be secure. And that means that once in a while, someone on what we would today call the right will have to make a sacrifice and publicly say that they have seen the light of socialism, communism, Islamofascism, or whatever flavor of totalitarianism is running the world at the moment. By throwing this kind of red meat at the tyrants of the future, they will better be lulled into a sense of security until the time comes that they can be overthrown. Now, I know everything that I've spoken of sounds rather dire and quite a lot to do. Some of you may even be thinking that it would be pretty much impossible to preserve and teach with the knowledge that I'm talking about. Totalitarian regimes can be very thorough. History has taught us this. But I'm here to tell you that not only can it be done, but that it can be proven that it has been done. Documents on the ancient Roman Republic lasted over 1,800 years, from the end of that republic to the beginning of the constitutionally federated Republic of the United States of America. And believe me when I say there were people in power who did not want the populations they controlled to be informed of any other form of government than the one they were living under. And yet, despite that, the documents were preserved and the teaching continued from generation to generation. If it's been done once, it can be done again. And for the naysayers out there who might be thinking that all I'm talking about would be just starting a multi-generational cycle over again that will inevitably end with more tyranny, I'll point out that the Constitutionally Federated Republic of the United States of America mandated more power to the individual than the ancient Roman Republic. This because the framers of the American Republic were able to study and refine methods of government used before, during, and after the ancient Roman Republic. They took the lessons of their past and formed a better version of a republic. If teachers and preservers of the information I'm speaking of hold to the task and do their jobs well enough through the years, the generation of patriots yet unborn will be prepared to set up a republic that not only mandates more power to the individual, but will avoid any mistakes possibly made by the framers of the American Republic, so making for a better chance that the ongoing cycle of freedom to tyranny and back again will not revert back to tyranny. Now, guys, I understand that what I'm talking about is not the kind of thing you want to hear. We all want to believe that we can resolve this thing in a few years. I don't believe we can. But what if I'm wrong? What if I'm full of crap? Well, you know what? If I am, it's not going to hurt anything to gather the materials that I'm talking about. Because one thing is absolutely for sure. The left is never going to go away. Elitists can gain too much power through socialism. Since I wrote American Sputnik, we've seen that socialists and Muslims have begun to operate in concert, something which is rather frightening to me, but something that I think should not be a surprise to anyone who has any notion of strategy. This is a favorite method. The enemy of my enemy is my friend. And right now, socialists are getting together with Muslims to create a control base. And that is going to be something that we have to counter over time. Patience is required in any long-term struggle, and we are going to have patience whether we like it or not. And one other aspect, we're going to have to deal sometimes with allies that we might not necessarily want to deal with. And what I mean by that is that we're going to have to deal with folks that we don't necessarily personally like. We're going to have to deal with people who may not have our same religious beliefs, our same lifestyle choices. Now, there are really good people out there who have really good values, but they don't necessarily want to deal with people who don't share their X, whatever it is. All right. Now, folks, let me tell you something. You're going to have to get over it. All right. That's not something that a lot of people want to hear. But if in the long term we are going to emerge victorious, and I think we will, if we're going to keep the interregnum as short as possible, and possibly save a generation or two from living under socialist dominance, we are going to have to ally ourselves with people who aren't 100% like us. Now, don't let the left tell you that only people on the right are like this. guaranteed there are plenty of leftist bigots. They just hide it better. They know all the politically correct language. They know how to spin everything so that it looks as if they're not bigots, but we know that there are just as many bigots on the left, if not more, than on the right. So, what do? We ask ourselves the question, which is more important, me being comfortable or me allying myself with whoever I need to further the cause of personal liberty? Now, I think most of the people on the right are going to make the correct choice. And here's something else that some of those folks are going to find. It might even come as a surprise to them. The people that don't necessarily have the same lifestyle choices or religious beliefs or things of that nature are not as bad as they might think. They're going to find this out to their delight. Now, as the new friends of the elitists say, the new friends being the Muslims, say, they have all the watches, we have all the time. And that, I believe, is the strategy, the long-term strategy that we on the right are going to have to develop while we're using short-term tactics. And if we do that, if we're nonviolent, if we're tolerant, if we are respectful, and if we work in this struggle for the return of personal liberty, I know that we can prevail. Now, there will be some who will say that all of this has been defeatist talk, and I bring to them 2 points. First of all, anyone in a struggle who does not allow for a long-term strategy and merely concentrates on short-term tactics is a fool. And the other one, we've already won. We need to understand that personal liberty is something that most people want and most people enjoy. So the question of personal liberty isn't one that we're going to lose on. We haven't lost. We will never lose. We've already won. And I say that with good short-term tactics and a long-term view that is respectful of others, pragmatic, and applied with love, we will find the way back. Whether you listened to this program as part of a series or in total, I want you to know that I appreciate each and every one of you. Take from this program and apply the methods suggested and add some of your own. Thank you for listening. May your God go with you, and may God go with the teachers and preservers of the legacy of personal liberty yet unborn. Goodbye. The Unpleasant Blind Guy is copyright 2015, Anno Domini.
Anno Domini. I think that means half off pizza at Domino's, doesn't it?
Well, it certainly did a couple of nights ago, boy.
Well, I would not want to be in Arlington, Texas right now. You know, they got the Cowboy game getting out, and you got the Ranger game starting at 7. Oh, my gosh, I can't believe what the traffic would be like there.
Oh, yeah, it's got to be hideous. You know, and I was talking to Kel because Kel's from the from the Toronto area, and we know that the Rangers are playing the Blue Jays.
Well,
so,
the Rangers are playing the Blue Jays. I'm not so sure the Blue Jays are playing the Rangers.
I see.
Okay.
Well, see, I'm not up on the game. So where are the standings right now?
Yeah, we're 2 up, I think, and this is game 3, I believe. Yeah. So We're looking good. We get this one, we've snagged it. So we'll be moving to the next layer.
Nice, very nice. I got to say, I would love to see the Rangers win a series because they never have in the entire history of the franchise. I'd love to see that. But we'll see. But Kel, we love you, but go Rangers.
That's right. It's going to be a bash by it. I'm a Texan. I stick with my teams. But yes. So, I used to call myself the underground professor because I figured that when the country goes tango uniform, that I'll sneak into the underground and be that guy that starts teaching people to create a rebellion and a resistance movement and guerrilla warfare type thing, and then go after. And but the exceptional conservative outed me, so I guess now I've moved up in status to being one of the frontline sacrifices for when the Muslims take over. I'll be one of the first they hunt down and take out, or try to take out. I don't know how many will be laying around my feet when they do it, but they'll come after me eventually, I'm sure.
Well, but the point is, until that time comes, you can teach, and as I said last week, you can create a lot more underground professors.
I hope.
You can just be the original.
You remember the show I did that I called Watch One, Do One, Teach One?
Actually, I believe I do.
Yeah,
you might want to expand on that, though.
Yeah, the premise being that in medical school, you watch a procedure, then you do the procedure you just watched, and then you teach it. And the reason for that is that watching you learn how to do it, then doing it, you actually get the mechanics of the procedure out of the way. But then when you teach it, you learn it from a different perspective, and you learn it so much better than just having witnessed the situation. And I always did that in my classrooms with important concepts. I would go through the concept of watch one, do one, teach one. And by doing that, whether my students even knew they were or not, I would demonstrate or give some examples, and then I would have others reiterate it, and then I would have them, or give me some of their own, and then I would have them explain to the class why their concepts were correct. And what they ended up doing was the watch one, do one, teach one methodology. And so I like to think that that's what I'm doing here. When I hear people use the term constitutionally federated republic and things like that, then I realize that that's what's happening. The people are listening to me do it, and now they're doing it, and hopefully they'll go out and teach others about it. And so you're a perfect example. You watched me do it, then you've done it, and now you're out teaching others. So, hoo-ah.
Well, yeah, and that is because you said it, and then I thought about it, and I realized that makes a whole lot of sense, because that's where we're at, or that's where we started, rather. And it made such common sense that I started adding that to my language, and I've heard other people say it too. Excuse me. Yeah. I've heard other people say it too.
Ken tries to say it, but he's not very successful at it. Well, being an English major, I guess that's really causing him some problems.
Oh, yeah. Well, that's true. But he does give it a try. So I give him an A for effort. He does. Yes. He does give it a shot. I give him an A for effort.
Well, we graded on an affirmative action curve, the bell curve for him, so he gets an A.
Oh, absolutely, yeah. Every time, because if he doesn't get an A, it's racist, and we don't want that. But people, you're mentioning Ken. People like Ken are going to have to be out there as well. His biggest draw as a podcaster is that he makes people feel every story that he relates. It doesn't matter if it's Cecil Mills or obviously his daughter Sharnice, or stories about unsolved murders, cold cases in D.C. He has a method of imparting that to people that makes them give a damn. And that is a talent that we need more of. The people in our corner need more of, and it's a natural talent. It's not something you can learn. It's just something he can do. But people like him are going to be some of the natural teachers as we move forward, and people like yourself who are more grounded in the historical aspects and things of that nature. it comes down, as I said, to doing what you can do. You guys will approach the same story with a different perspective, but they're equally valid, and they both should be listened to equally, and they both can teach, and they're both things that people can engage in. Ken can make someone go out and sign an online petition or start a rally or go to a church or something like that. You make people go out and do research and then teach others. In a way, Prof, we can all be teachers, even schmucks like me, because not only can you learn from anybody, that's one of my bromides. I can learn from anybody, but everybody can teach in their own way. Everyone has their own method of teaching, and it doesn't matter how it is. Now, in the past, 3 weeks or so, close to a month, we've talked about people who can go out there and pick a guitar and sing a song, and people like what they're singing. And if they throw a message in there, well, that's teaching. People can write, some people can, and that's a method of teaching. Some people can do stand-up comedy, and it's really entertaining, and they can teach that way. These are our methods that the left has used for generations, and they're methods that we should use, in my opinion. Your thoughts?
The most important way people can teach, especially conservatism, is to live their lives by example, to do the right thing, and to be moral and ethical as much as possible. And when you fail, to stand back up, dust yourself off, and try harder again tomorrow. That will teach people more than anything else in society how to behave and how to work, and that it's effective. As long as it's not done in a hypocritical manner, then the teaching's good. But you're right, everyone can teach. This is why I like having progtards come on my show, but none will, is because of the illustration I get to use to expose them, because then they teach what it's about, what they believe, and that, more than what I could tell people, is an enforcement of teaching, but even people like that unwittingly teach. But for those who think, I can't teach, I think that's really what you're getting at, and that is that we all do, and we do it 1,000 times a day. Whether we lean over somebody's shoulder and point out something to them, or we have a child. If you're a parent, then you can teach. Again, by example or by instruction, but you're still teaching constantly as a parent. So it's nothing that you have to leave just to the educators. And as far as education goes, I think we need to consciously start getting people recruited into the education world. And we need to do it also in the entertainment world. I've noticed more and more people in Hollywood are coming out, and the new coming out, black's the new orange. Well, today the new coming out is admitting that you believe in the Constitution, and you're seeing this in the military, you're seeing it in Hollywood, you're seeing it in television shows and whatnot. I've been watching and listening, and it's amazing how there'll be a tiny little conservative message here and there. One sentence, one statement, one look. And I think that's going to grow. It's terrible we're facing the dilemmas we are in this country, but the good news is the more they do this, the more unabashed they do it. And they're willing to, say and do things. I'm going to kill you if you don't shut up. The more they...
Hey, just like that.
Yeah, just like that. See, I'm teaching.
Yeah, there you go, yeah.
And,
perfect example,
to make sure she knew that I knew it wasn't her.
Right.
Well, I forget my line, but we got to get into these fields and fill them, because we basically have surrendered them since the McCarthy witch hunt. We all but quit being in Hollywood and in academia. And we've paid the price utterly for it. While they capitalized on pop culture and the media, we stand around pompously saying that we were better, and you people would just naturally understand that without teaching them, without educating them. And that's the great fault of the Republican Party. Not that our ideas are substandard, but the fact that we do not teach them. And if we do win, we just immediately assume that we've won, and we don't have to ever teach or keep people abreast of what we're doing or why it's the right way.
Well, you're right. I mean, we win elections, but we don't win the hearts and minds of the people. You're absolutely right. Now, I shared earlier a video with you over the Twitter of some atheist talking to Bill Maher, and he was talking about Islam, which we're not talking about this evening, but he was talking about the free speech movement at Berkeley. He said was saying that he could remember this, and this was in the early 1960s, and back then. The free speech movement was exactly that. You could do and actually were encouraged to speak up on whatever ideas you had, and those might be conservative or progressive. It didn't matter. That's turned around on our campuses now. If you let's say for instance you are Bill Maher and you come out and you say that Islam is a problem, you might become disinvited to a commencement address. To give a commencement address at Berkeley, at the very place where the free speech movement supposedly started. So, yes, you are right about that. It is the new coming out when people actually come out with conservative ideas, and it's going to take an awfully long time for things to swing back to more of a center when it comes to people in entertainment who come out and say, yes, I'm a conservative, I'm a constitutionalist, and I'm also a darn good actor, and music is the same way. I actually have a fan. She's one of the few. Loves my shows, but she says she can't share them because she's a musician. And she's afraid that she won't get gigs for herself and her band if she shares out my shows. This is the kind of thing that we have to turn around, because there are more people out there, we know this, that agree with us, that agree with constitutionalism. Forget conservatism for the moment. They agree with constitutionalism. They agree that the Bill of Rights are the cat's rear end. It's great, but they can't come out and openly defend it against people like Muslims who would just throw it in the dustbin of history, because they will lose their livelihoods if they do. If they're an actor, they'll never get a part again. If they're a musician, then they'll lose gigs, and they might not get signed to a record contract or whatever. This is a kind of cultural shift that you're talking about that's beginning, that needs to be continued, and that's why I encourage people in the way back who have talent to go out there and flaunt that talent and get to a point where they can entertain and sell their stuff, and where people want to hear from them, and then begin to slip a conservative message in here and there. That's how it starts. That's how the left did it. And you were bang on with your analysis of what happened to Hollywood after the McCarthy era. I mean, now we know that at this point in history that McCarthy was right in a lot of the things, to go after a lot of the people he did. There was a a communist conspiracy going on in the entertainment world at the time. We can argue about the methods that McCarthy used, but
or who knew that it was the Muslim threat we needed to really worry about, not the commies.
Exactly. Yeah. Yes. Exactly. Hindsight 2020. We can argue about all of that, but that's pretty useless at this point. What we have to do at this point is try and get people into entertainment and academia and places like that, and get them established and then they can come out, and people can see them. They can and they can be entertained by them, and then by the way, I do not believe in socialism. I believe in capitalism. So there's that aspect of it too.
Well, yes. Let me tell you another thing that we should be doing, and that is, and this is in regards to the teaching part. If you know somebody, like say you have a child or grandchild that's in school, or you know a teacher that goes to your church or goes to your health club or lives down the street, however you know them, you should start talking to them. And don't overload them or avalanche them, but just start talking to them about what they teach and how do they know what they're teaching's right. And you don't do that by saying, "Hey, how do you know what your teaching's right?" But you ask them how they get the information and where it comes from and who authorizes it, and they'll tell you these things because their innocent questions have nothing really to do with them. This is out of their scope of control. And then you may start asking them some questions like, "Well, what do they teach about the Boston Tea Party or George Washington or whatever?" And then you can say, "Oh my goodness, I've never heard it like that." And then you can start telling them the reality and the truth, of course, which you can get here. And but you do this slowly and without it being like you're educating them, but just in a casual conversation. But we need to do this with teachers because I blame teachers for the problems we have in school, but most of them don't even know what they're teaching's wrong, because they go to school and they're given this stuff and they're told this is what they need to teach, and they assume it's correct. And the teachers that are teaching them may not even know it's wrong. It's the ones that created it that know that they were creating falsehoods. But once it gets a generation or two down with some revisions and whatnot, people tend to lose that fact. And that's why we have to educate in the first place in our country, because our education system has changed from teaching. Let me rephrase this. The one thing about public schools that has always been consistent is that its job was to teach us about government. Now, the Founding Fathers, their concept of it was to teach us about the Constitution and how government was supposed to work so that if it wasn't, we would know and we could go after those responsible. Today, the role of the schools is to teach people that government is there for them from cradle to grave, and everything they do is awesome. Even when they fail, it's with good intentions, so don't blame them and help them try again. And because of that, we need to re-educate our educators, and we need to do it in a non-threatening manner. And so when I say watch one, do one, teach one, that's your target. Back to you.
Yeah, and you bring up a point about doing that, which is, I know there are a lot of angry people out there, and we've got darn good reason to be angry, but just getting in somebody's face and saying, well, you ought to teach this stuff this way, you jerk, that's not going to get you anywhere. I'm not, sorry, my British friends, but I'm not a huge fan of the Beatles, only because their stuff just got vastly overplayed over here. But, from their song Revolution, if you go around, I'll rephrase it a little bit. If you go around acting like a dirtbag and yelling in people's faces and being disrespectful, you're just going to close their minds against you. And that's why I try to approach some things the way I do, even from a perspective viewpoint, a progressive viewpoint. I try to let progressives know that, for instance, what's going on now with the progressive Muslim control base will not serve them and their needs. It's not so much about how it's a bad thing for conservatives or libertarians. It's about how it's a bad thing for progressives. It's kind of like, Prof, how, have you ever heard of the guy in Las Vegas who has the trained cats? He's got a troop of trained cats that he has a show with on stage in Las Vegas. Have you heard of this guy?
Yeah, weren't they gay and one of them got eaten by one of them?
No. You're thinking of another couple of guys, and they use tigers. This is
Siskel and Ebert or something like that.
No, not them. This is a single guy. His daughter helps him in his act, and they have house cats, domestic cats that they train to do stuff. Now, his method to get them to do what he wants them to do is he goes to the shelters and he picks out the cats, and he trains them to do the things that they already like to do anyway. Okay, he doesn't try and train a house cat to do something that it doesn't want to do. If you're not familiar with house cats, if a cat doesn't want to do something, you're going to have a really hard time training it to do that. But if it already likes doing something, then you're halfway there. And that's what he does. He trains the cats to do the things that they like to do. In other words, he gets on their level as far as, this cat may like to jump from one platform to the next one. So he trains them to do that. And they do it because they like to do it anyway. Okay?
I'm with you.
Yeah.
My father always said, though, that a cat has staff and dogs have masters.
Oh, absolutely, yeah. Absolutely. So when you approach someone like an educator or just someone, let's say somebody at work, Gieske's told me about, this guy at work that's this big progressive that's always popping off. If you have somebody at work like that, you can approach them and just say, okay, well, all right. Now you're for massive welfare, and okay, you and I can argue over whether or not that's a good thing. But how about the fact that President Obama wants to import 100,000 combat-age men from the Middle East? I mean, is that not going to make for less welfare for the indigenous people of the United States, for American Indians, and for black people? Is that not going to hurt the people that are already here? In other words, teach it.
You got to hit them at their level. I always ask them why all these able-bodied men are coming here, and it's too dangerous to bring their wives and children with them, so they leave them in the war zone that they're fleeing.
Exactly. Yes, that's another good way of doing it. I've got a friend. He doesn't mind that I call him this, so I'm just going to say it. I've got a friend, that I call Paranoid Paul. He's not very political, but when he thinks about politics, he's fairly well on point. And he calls these guys cowards. He says, well, why are that they're young men of fighting age? Why the heck are they leaving the area? If your side is losing, find another side to fight on. Don't go off somewhere else. The message has to be tailored to the person, and that's something that the left does, Prof, very well. As you know, they've got messages for kids through things like Sesame Street. They've got tons of messages for preteens and teens through things like MTV and popular music. They've got messages for the older people, in the form of some of their people that they trot out from Hollywood and the old music days. They've got plenty of messages for them, and they've got messages for the 18 to 50 crowd as well, with some of the television programs they right, yeah. One of their great means of messaging, as we know, is through television. And I was talking to Kel about this earlier. I used to like the show, The Big Bang Theory, but it went hard left messaging a long time ago. I can't even watch the show anymore. But it has a wide appeal to that 18 to 50 crowd. And that's what they do. They have a message for everyone of almost every interest. And that those are the kinds of things that we have to develop on the right when we're teaching people about this stuff.
Yeah.
Your thoughts?
Yeah, they lost me when they started marrying each other and coming out of the closet and pushing. You know, they got famous enough that they could change the direction of the show from just being funny to being a political statement, and that lost it. Same with Seth Rogen. You know, is the stuff he's constantly doing and saying, and it's just such idiocy, like the thing about Ben Carson. So I won't see another Seth Rogen movie, and that's too bad because I really liked his stuff. But yeah, but you know, the problem is we don't seem to have anybody that's offering a difference. And when we do, when you get things that are being offered, like religious movies, they aren't correct, you know, or they're preachy and they're not. Now, I don't know about you, but when you watch Cecil B. DeMille, and he gets a lot of things wrong, but when you watch his Ten Commandments, you don't really feel like you're being preached to.
No,
you know what I mean?
No, you feel like you're being entertained. And I'll give you another one real quick, Prof. You know, to your point, I'll give you another one real quick, and that was that mini-series, The Bible. Now, the guy that put that thing together was an Obama supporter, but that's dynamite entertainment.
I haven't seen it yet.
Do yourself a favor and watch it. It's probably on your Netflix or something like that.
Oh yeah,
I
have
had
it
a look
on there saved, but
yeah,
he was an Obama supporter. I thought the devil looked like
yes.
Obama in that thing.
Well, that's what people said, you know. But the point is, I took a look. I took my own look at the ratings for the nights that thing was on, and it destroyed everything in its path. People loved it, and you know, the production values were first rate. Absolutely, it was very entertaining. And no, again, just as you said, as far as the DeMille movies go, you didn't feel like somebody was preaching at you. And yet the message was very good. You know, I would say to anybody, do yourself a favor and watch that if you can manage it. Heck, even the DVD isn't that expensive. You know, I want to get it for myself because, you know, it's exactly the sort of thing you're talking about, Prof. It's not preachy, and yet it is very inspiring. So there you go. Back to you.
So, now, when I was listening to parts 1 and 2, I kept thinking we need to add Bastiat's books, and then you made good on your revisions. So yes, you put Bastiat in there in part 3. Did I not hear his name?
Yes. Yep. Yeah. You did. Bastiat, Locke, you know, and again the precursors to our Bill of Rights, you know, I put those in as well.
Yes.
Because people have to know how the American Republic started. They have to know where all that. Yes, how and why, and they have to realize this wasn't just made out of whole cloth. That this began with our Constitution in a way began with the 12 Tables of Roman Law. And you know, the Bill of Rights in a way began with the Magna Carta, but there's a whole line of stuff that goes all the way down to the 17th century that they had to build on in order to create all that.
Right.
So people of the future will need this so that they're not saying, oh, the great founders of the American Republic did sit in Philadelphia in a hot, sweaty room and did poop this greatness out of their rear ends. No, that's
well, that came out of their cat's behind, evidently, according to you.
Yeah. But if they do that, then there's bound to be somebody sitting on the side going, "Oh, come on, you know, nobody's that good." But if you give
exactly. I think I have every book you listed.
Go ahead.
I'm sorry. I didn't hear you still talking. I apologize.
Well, no, I'm just going to say, if you give them the information of how they came to that, then suddenly those framers become human as the people that are going to be setting up the Republic at a time that we know not.
Right, the next time. Yeah. I agree.
Exactly.
And And of course they'll be flawed too, but hopefully they can do what the founders did. The founders learned from the mistakes of those in the republics of the past, and they refined political science. And I would like to think that the next generation that has to do this will learn from the mistakes the founders made, pay a little more attention to the Anti-Federalists and stuff. So you would want to add the Anti-Federalist papers, Cato's papers, etc.
Yes,
letters to the farmer,
Cato.
From the Pennsylvania. I've been doing the B Team series on the Founding Fathers. I think a lot of their writing we probably ought to tuck in there somewhere. But did you mention C.S. Lewis?
You know what? You're right. That would be a great one. But this ties in right here, Prof. You've already, through the talks we've had, you've contributed a couple of things, and not just these writers. C.S. Lewis is great, by the way. But you've talked about buying large, like large numbers of some of these things and passing them out. You've also talked about creating little small, as you said, Minuteman pamphlets that you can just hand out that won't be really big things, stuff that you can just kind of carry along in your coat, and if we do have a repressive government and you talk to someone and you think you can trust them, you go, hey, here, I got something for you. Here you go. And it might have one of Cato's letters in it, or something like that. This is exactly what I'm talking about when I'm talking about making individualistic choices, along with the other stuff that I suggested.
Yes. Yep. And I figured we might as well include some of the stuff from the Ink Spots since you included Tolkien. I figured, well, you better balance that with C.S. Lewis, and there is one book I think that may be instrumental, and that is, if someone wants to understand what government is, it would be called The Basic American Government by Carson. And I don't even know if it's still in print anymore, but it was how I learned what I know. Most of what I know came out of that book and the 5,000-Year Lead, of course.
Now, is that a textbook?
Huh? It's a textbook, yeah.
Okay. No,
it's like from the 70s or something, So it's pre-polluted textbooking, and that's what I'm talking about. In other words, it's a good old-fashioned civics book. Right. The way they used to be, and you mentioned that. I think I remember you saying that we needed to beat the 70s or 60s so that we could get stuff that hasn't been modified completely by the Fabian socialists.
Right.
Yeah.
Yes, I think I said basically anything before about 1970. Certainly anything before the 80s.
Right.
Some of the stuff in the 70s is okay, but it's by the 70s. This is when I went to school, and it's more or less when you went to school. I think we're about the same age. Things were already starting to be modified, but only in that they were not as complete as they could have been. American history books, Texas history books. Of course, I went to school in Texas, and we learned Texas history, boy. Those kinds of things that are not, it's not that things were turned around or anything of that nature, but some things just weren't included. I think in order to make the curriculum move faster or something like that. And who knows? That could have very well been the beginning of the modification of these things over a few generations. But I'd say certainly anything before 1970.
I think I would also add Parson Weems' book on what's the title of it? I think I've got a copy of it here. I do. Let me see if I can find it again. It's on The Life of Washington by Parson Weems. You remember the Parson Weems fable about can't tell a lie, chopping down the cherry tree and all that? He's the one that started that. But I think that book would be great for an illustration. And we did that book study a couple of years ago on here. But it'd be a good way of illustrating how new governments need their myths to promote the correct and moral ideologies of it. Not out and out lies like like the Soviet Union did to promote what it thought was good about its system. But the morals of not lying, and telling the truth, and that's why everybody could trust George Washington to do the right thing. The man was a consummate liar and a spy master, and everybody knew this when Parson Weems wrote his book right after the death of Washington. But people immediately bought into this myth, even though they knew the truth, because of the morals it was teaching. And teachers across this country used that as a textbook, teaching their kids, knowing that they were teaching their kids a lie about George Washington, but that the message was more important. And it was inculcating our children with morals and ethics, and that's what they were using it for. And I think we should do that. And I think I would add one other thing, just for fun, because we don't want to bore everybody to death in the future when they're trying to save the country. But I think without them knowing it, a surprise series of books, just virtually any Robert A. Heinlein book, Starship Troopers, A Door into Summer, those books should all be included. So it'd be fun, but you'll also learn about government through the back door.
Well, hang on a second, because I was waiting for you to end your selection there, because I was going to suggest The Moon is a Harsh Mistress by Robert A. Heinlein.
Sure.
In that one, for those who don't know, we're doing our science fiction series now that we were going to do. In that one, it is a story of how the moon, which was a protectorate of the planet Earth, obviously, broke away from Earth and formed Luna Free State. It formed its own independent country. And there's some very fascinating things in there about the realities of revolution, the mechanics of revolution, and yes, there's some. He talks about myths in there as well. Robert A. Heinlein, as far as his persona goes, was kind of a freakazoid, but he did do some pretty good predictive science fiction. There's that book, and yes, as you say, Starship Troopers. I have to tell you, Prof, if I were president, that's pretty much exactly how I'd run the military.
Textbook. That's right, and how I would get voting.
Oh, definitely. Oh, yeah. Yes, absolutely. That's actually been discussed. Basically, if you don't serve, you don't vote.
I'd be okay with that, but I'd also be okay with if, other than veterans, if you get a paycheck from the government, then you should not be able to vote to increase your paycheck. So I think anybody that's a politician and anybody on welfare should not be allowed to participate in the electoral process.
Well, yeah, we can kind of refine that a little bit, but a lot of ideas that Heinlein puts out, some of them are just flat out freaky, and a few of them just kind of make you go.
Kind of L. Ron Hubbard-ish.
Yeah, but he does. In the two books we're talking about, The Moon is a Harsh Mistress and The Starship Troopers, you do get a good and interesting sense of where his head is at regarding government and the future, and it's very pragmatic, and it's entertaining.
Yeah. Don't forget Door in the Summer, right? That's the one where the kids, they go into an alternate planet and they get trapped, so they have to create their own government from scratch. It's kind of a Lord of the Flies thing.
Actually, that's not a bad one. But I think what you're talking about could be Pebble in the Sky. People might have. Oh,
am I getting them confused? It's been a long time, but you know what? I'm going to go buy them all now so I can start reading them again on Kindle.
Well, yeah. It's you're exactly right though. If Pebble in the Sky is the title, that is what happens. What happens this is for people who don't know. Young people who are about to graduate high school, or in some cases college, have to pass a kind of a survival course. It's kind of a weekend deal. They send them off to a planet that they're not familiar with, and they have to survive for a weekend. No big deal, right? Except something happens with the transportation system that sent them out there, and they're stuck for a couple of years. They have to form their own government. They have to form associations, alliances, stuff like that. And yes, that's a great book you thought of, because in there things could have gone either way. I mean, they could have all turned into they could have turned into a bunch of roving gangs and stuff like that. But what they wound up doing was setting up an actual town with law enforcement and manufacturing.
Well, the way you should word it is that they set up civilized society with a social compact as opposed to might makes right.
Yes,
now,
exactly.
we have reached our break time, which I don't normally take, but I don't want... Mary's not here, so in honor of Mary, we'll take our break. and,
we love you, Mary.
When we come back, I think one of the things we didn't do is we didn't mention any books written in modernity. So, I mean, other than Carson, which was in the 70s, I don't think we mentioned anything that was newer, did we? So let's do that when we come back from break. How's that sound?
Okay. You spin a tune, and we'll be back.
All right, and this is in honor of Agadorable, the unscented blind guy. I can't think of a more fitting show, and it's the 40th anniversary too. We'll be back. Well timed.
Michael Rennie was ill the day the earth stood still, but he told us where we stand. And Flash Gordon was there in silver underwear. Claude Rains was the invisible man. Then something went wrong for Fay Ray and King Kong. They got caught in a cellular jam. Then at a deadly pace, it came from outer space. And this is how the message ran. Science fiction, double feature. Dr. X will build a creature. The android fighting Brad and Janet, and Francis stars in Forbidden Planet. At the late night double feature picture show. I knew Leo G. Carroll was over a barrel when Tarantula took to the hills. And I really got hot when I saw Jeanette Scott fight a triplet that spits poison and kills. Dana Andrews said Prune gave him the room, and passing them used lots of skills. But when worlds collide, said George Powell to his bride, I'm gonna give you some terrible thrills, like a science fiction double feature. Dr. X will build a creature. The android fighting Brad feature picture show by RKO. To the late night double feature picture show in the back row. To the late night double feature picture show.
Crud, another one that ended prematurely. Rock Your Heart Science Fiction Show, the science fiction show song. I'm holding up my Second Amendment coin. For those of you on Periscope can see it. It's copper. And it's really cool looking, I think. Yep. And it's a $2 copper coin. I like these. For those of you who want species in the future to, forgot to turn on ag, to protect yourself so you can buy things. I always have this. Every show I have this. I'm usually nervously fondling it while I'm thinking. Gives my hands something to do and keeps them out of my nose. All right, Harris here. We got everybody in the back here. So there's some boys out in my field playing football, and here you go, Harris. Yeah. And so that's why those kids were barking earlier. The dogs were barking earlier. All right, so we're back. We're talking with Agador, the unpleasant blind guy, over the Way Back, a series we've been doing. And we're talking about modern books. And one of the things I think, instead of saying what I would include, one of the things I would not include are any of the books by the exalted one, Rush Limbaugh, or Glenn Beck, or even, what's his name, the other one, Mark Levin.
Really?
I've read all their books, and none of them would I want to put into a package to save the country because of the way they're designed and what they talk about. What do you think?
So you would not include, now I've got to say, I have my issues with Glenn Beck, and that's well known. But I have to say that I have learned a couple of historical things from him, like, what initiated the Wounded Knee Massacre, and I have to say that I'm very appreciative of that. But I have not actually sat down and read any of his books. So I would appreciate knowing why you wouldn't want to put any of his books or the others in, just for my own edification and for that of the listeners.
Well, I'll tell you. Here's why. What do they focus on? Limbaugh's books, like "See, I Told You So" and stuff, are things that he talked about on the radio show, but mostly they point out the faults of progressivism and liberalism. And if we're at the point where we're having to restore a constitution that's dead and a progressive Muslim type country, then I don't think that argument needs to be made anymore. I think the argument needs to be made of why a republic, not why everybody else is wrong. And a lot of these end up having political statements that they put in that are just that. And they're politics. They're not I have a definition I call creative politics and innuendo politics, and that they fall into mostly that. Now, creative politics today, at the time of the revolution, may very well have fallen into innuendo politics. I mean, things like Thomas Paine,
right,
the Declaration of Independence, they were all innuendo politics, but they also served another point, and they were creative. They were creating a new world order, and that's what they were trying to do, something that had not been done before, a republic that had never existed in history. And they were very successful at what they did in creating a more perfect union, not a perfect one. But when I look at these things that they write, I don't see anything in it that is a concept that we need to rebuild and that the entire book would be worth having. In order to do one of these, I think the entire concept of the book must run through. and so because books aren't cheap, and they're big and cumbersome, and and so you would want them to be worth the effort of hauling around and secreting and hiding and reading and memorizing and teaching. So I don't think that we need that. Now, there's that one book, I don't remember, I've got it up here on the shelf, that he does. As an Indian, I already knew about Wounded Knee, but the concepts of the book were that government does a lot more wrong than we give it credit for, and we get that. But I don't know that I would stick that in. Now, if I was to pick a book from modernity, it would be something like the Capitalist Manifesto by Gary Wolfram, who's a professor at Hillsdale College. And he talks about how capitalism does work and is an argument, and it's in a concise little paperback book. As a matter of fact, I can reach it, I hope, without everything falling over. Here it is I'm putting it on Periscope for you to see. And it's kind of like a refutal to the Communist Manifesto, right? But it's understanding the market economy and defending liberty. Now, that's the concepts of things that I look for. It explains the economy, which is one of the things that we really didn't include in any of our lists, is economics. We did politics, we did freedom, we did republic, but we didn't stick economics in there. And now we could have added Adam Smith, but that's a tune that you can use to hold open the door to an Abrams tank. And
that's where Atlas Shrugged comes in. Yeah.
Yes, now, Atlas Shrugged does do that. But there's a lot of people have a lot of problems with Ayn Rand and her books. I don't personally, but I think they're great for what they do. But as far as a pure book on defending capitalism, I've seen many that say that's what they're doing. This is the only one that I've seen that actually does it, and it goes through and lists examples, and it's a great little way of introducing the concepts of capitalism and economics and why it works, and refutes those examples that are often used by the left in showing why it doesn't work. When using it, the people like Sanders and those guys. This is a great refutation of it, and face it, if the country falls, then capitalism's over. And we'll be slaves, and we'll be in a slave economy again, not a capitalist economy.
Right. Yeah. It'll be a collective state of some sort, certainly.
Right. A theocracy.
and what the one honestly, I can't think of a lot of books written in modernity that go along with what you're talking about. And honestly, I think you are correct that we won't need books at that future time that throw tomatoes at the government, because there are already going to be tomatoes being thrown at the government, rotten tomatoes. We'll need books that actually offer solutions, and not just that talk about old problems, stuff that happened as far as those people are going to be concerned in their great grandfather's times. What I was thinking of, as far as a modern book goes, would be something like The Road to Serfdom. That's by F.A. Hayek.
Yes, that's another one I was going to mention too. So yeah, anything Hayek wrote, or Thomas Sowell or Walter E. Williams. Right. Books that as you say, Prof, books that offer frameworks in good arguments as to why, for instance, capitalism is the best economic system for the people, as opposed to collective systems, which always seem to support a well-moneyed ruling class on the backs of a very large working class. Books of that nature that are actually of some use. So I see what you're saying when you don't when you're talking about not putting in books by Limbaugh and Beck and people like that. And people might do that just because they happen to be fans of theirs. I personally don't think that would be of any use. And personally, but I
I hesitate to tell people not to include things, or if they do include them, I'd say I would say that they might want to put in a preface of their own, tuck a piece of paper in there or something like that says something along the lines of, all right, this book was written by Ann Coulter in the year let's say 2010, and it regards the political situation in the United States of America and the world as of that year. And that way people will know that it was something that was written relevant to that time and to that time only. Again, this is something that the future founders are they might glance at it, but I think they're going to get a lot more use out of for instance, the book that you talked about, the civics book that you referred to. They're going to get a lot more use out of that, and they're going to get a lot more use out of the anti-federalist papers. That's just my opinion. Your thoughts?
Yeah, I think that's a good point. There's actually no book I would ban, but
right.
There are books that I would put. You got to create triage here. You got to decide what's worth having. What's worth spending our time and money on, and anybody could pick anything and do that, and I wouldn't say that's wrong, but because everything we had that we can add to culture and to society and information is worth it. But we're looking at the angle from this show as an angle of how to reconstruct a society and recreate civil society with capitalist and Republican ideals. And so that's the angle that I looked at on what would I include, what would I have, because there are fantastic books. The Constitutional Reader from Hillsdale's one, but there's all these great books like Friends of Liberty by Nash and Hodges would be great. All the James Bond books would be great, but
well,
but
what
there
about
are things that lead and help and things that would be nice, but after civil society's picked up.
Well, yes. Well, one that I'm thinking of. What about the minutes to the Constitutional Convention?
Yes. Didn't we say that? I thought we did say that. Because the debates on the Constitution, the Federalist Papers, Anti-Federalist Papers, you have to have all of those.
Yes, I did put in the Federalist Papers and the Anti-Federalist Papers, but not the actual minutes as recorded during the debates. I think that would be very helpful. That would be something else to throw in. So yes, and you bring up a great point. I say be individualistic in your choices, but also realize that it's a lot easier to hide something that's more or less a few feet square than it is to hide something that's the size of a room. If it comes to a point where you have to hide something. So that's why your selection of materials might have to be rather small because that's easier to conceal. And as I said, future governments that are going to be very totalitarian, it's going to be a lot easier for them to find a book collection that's the size of a refrigerator than it is to find one that's the size of say a bread maker. So,
yeah, if they get to my house, the book burning will probably be able to be seen from the moon.
Yeah, there you go.
It's like I've got over 5,000 books here.
Well, they'd have to bring the salamander to your place. That's, by the way, for people who aren't familiar what that is, that's the fire engine, the literally fire engine from Fahrenheit 451.
Right.
Yeah,
that blows off the fire of the hose.
Yep, exactly. Yeah. That I think it was like fueled by kerosene. And yeah, it's a big fire truck, and everybody rides on the thing and all that, But then they get off and pull out the hose and everything, and just blast all the books in the house, and then blast the house. So
for good measure.
Oh yeah, exactly. Yeah. well, can't have a house around where there's been all these nasty books with these unapproved ideas inside. Come on, but yeah, I mean the choices are going to have to be individual, but I think we both offered some good choices, and it's something that people can do moving forward if they I like to tell people you're never powerless. There is something that you can do, and if nothing else, you can do this. And I mean, there are going to be plenty of people who are going to be involved in the more kinetic versions of revolution in the coming generations. That's going to happen as well. But I would say that in his way, Thomas Paine was every bit as important as George Washington.
Yeah, they all had their roles. You remember I did a few shows where I called it the Indispensable Man series, and I pointed out that, Franklin was the indispensable man, Washington was the indispensable man. And without any of them, I don't think we'd have become a country, because it took what they did to push the country. Paine, if it wasn't for common sense, then Washington's army would have been so demoralized. Who knows? We might not have had the victories that came after that. So there's all these different people had all these different roles, and I think if you take any one of them away, then we might not be standing here today free, or whatever we are standing here today as.
Well, I think you're right. And I think that anybody listening to this might be thinking, well, okay, I'm just a homemaker. I'm just a 40-year-old homemaker that, yeah, sure, I graduated high school, but I can't go out and give speeches, and I don't have a lot of money to go out to rallies, or I don't have it. I just don't have it in me to run for office and be successful. So I don't feel that there's anything that I can do. And the fact is, yes, you can. There are things that you can do that if will not bear fruit today, they could bear fruit in a time yet to come. And I think that's important, because another thing that we'll have to do in the years ahead is we'll have to keep our spirits up, and that's going to include bringing everyone in on the revolution, just as all of us are part of the militia of the United States of America, and that's why we have the Second Amendment. You could say that all of the people will be the Minutemen of the new revolution, even if all they do in their lifetimes is gather together the materials and teach what they can, and then pass those on. After they're gone, it'll be their kids' turn and their kids' turn after that. There are, there are probably at this point billions of people throughout history that we'll never know. Each of them in their day did what they could to move people towards personal liberty. They knew what the goal was, and they knew they'd never see it in their lifetimes. But in their day, they did their little bit, whatever it was, to move us to the point where we started the American Republic. We'll never know those people, but I'm eternally grateful to them, all of them, for what they did, and I'm perfectly content at this stage to die and be forgotten, as long as some people use the idea that I've thrown out there and pass it on and do something and maybe relieve some suffering for a generation or two of people in the future. You may not be recognized. Your name may not be in the history books. In fact, it probably won't. But you'll know it, and that's the most important thing.
Yeah, that's right.
What do you think of that?
Now you think about that. Of all the people that have died, how many people are still remembered by most people? Outside of a handful of presidents and serial killers, not very many. But their concepts, their ideas, their fights lived on. And what you described would have described most of this country for most of their lives. They spent teaching the value of freedom and liberty and the limited government. And it is only, there's one less fly in this world. Call PETA. Oh, man. Sorry.
Wait a minute, now that might be Kel's
I left the
fly.
back door open,
okay.
And I got like 5 flies in here now coming from the back door. But you're right. Now, it wasn't until the welfare state was created that paradigm shifted, and that now we have, 40, 50%. Somewhere I saw a statistic that 53% of the country still works, and the rest are on welfare. So, there's a little over half of us are still promoting liberty and freedom, and the other half are promoting, cradle to grave government comfort. And I'd imagine that there's not even half of those people still promoting freedom. There's probably a lot of them that are willing to give up any time now because they're just tired of feeding and funding independence off of their paycheck that they have never met or heard of, and which is exactly what we're doing. But yes, for the future, you never know. I think back on those shows I've done where I've said something and then I've gotten a message back. One in particular that still chills me. I talked about when I was severely crippled, and I go after things like doctor-assisted suicide. And I was actually in a position where I considered that. And then I considered my own suicide, forget the doctor. And I discussed with the audience what I had gone through with that. And, it was a completely vulnerable thing to do and say, and I don't even know why I did it, but I felt compelled to do it, so I did. And then I got an email back that there was somebody on her bed, and she turned on the computer for background noise on Blog Talk and randomly selected a show, and it was mine. She'd never heard it, and she heard my show, and it saved her life. And so you don't know who's hearing you when you teach or talk sometimes, like you're doing it over the radio. But your message may not even affect those that are your primary audience, people that are listening to you, but they might go out and say something and it affects somebody that makes a difference. And so, just because you don't think you're being effective or that the world will know who you are in the future is a reason not to push this or to do it or, to protect your freedom now.
Right. You do it because it's right. It's just like I don't know. You've used this example yourself. It's just like a cashier gives you too much change. Well, you can just walk off, but you don't. You go back in and you go, hey, you gave me $1 too much here. Does it change the world? No, it doesn't. But you did it because it's the right thing to do.
It's funny you bring up that example, Ag, because I've had a lot of people tell me that story has made them feel guilty, and when they go out and do stuff, and they're like, "Oh crap, the professor told that story." And, I think that's funny.
Oh yeah. Well, yeah. It's what people and this is a problem I think with our culture, and who knows, this could even be intentional on the part of the Fabian socialists. That somehow every person deserves to have their name up in lights. They deserve to be recognized nationally and internationally for what they do, and they deserve to be remembered until the end of time. And it's usually for nothing, and that's why you have people. That's why you get kids on YouTube spraying themselves in the face with bear mace. Which, if you've never watched any of those videos, that's just funny as anything. But what young people aren't being taught today is that recognition only has to come from within, and from God. And if you know it, then God knows it, and you're cool. You don't have to have recognition from your peers, your friends, your family, I mean, almost nobody in my family listens to my show. You don't have to have any of that as long as you know that you've done it and you've done what you've done for good reasons, because it's the right thing to do. This is a message that isn't being given enough to young people. In fact, the opposite message is being given to them. And that if you talk to some of these psychologists out there about some of the mass shooters, they say, well, that's the reason that they go out and do this, because they know they're going to get like maybe a day's coverage on the national news. Never mind the other implications. They're going to be famous and they're going to be recognized and people are going to know their names. Now, of course, that has pervaded our culture so much now that people do these horrible things, and 2 weeks later we forget who they were. So it's beginning to have an opposite effect. But if you can teach the young that their own deeds, their own works, if recognized by themselves, are going to be enough, then you'll have people that are prepared to do the right thing just because it's right, not necessarily because they're going to get any kind of recognition. I mean, God, you and Ken blow me away in ratings, but I still do my stupid little show because I know it's the right thing to do.
Yeah, I only have tens of listeners.
Well, you got more than you think.
Yeah, I'm with you also on family. My parents look at me like I've grown a third eye when I ask if they've heard my show. None of my family, I think, listens to me anymore. Every now and then God's Girl does, and once in a blue moon, my oldest daughter tunes in to hear. But the problem is with family is they're too close to you. They think they already know everything you're going to say, and that you're crazy. So why bother wasting the time listening? And same with coworkers and things. They think they know you. But that's the way that is. That's the way that is. Now, go ahead.
No. Go on.
Oh, I was going to say, but the important thing is what we're doing now is encapsulated digitally. And so our shows are being captured, they're being preserved electronically. And so as long as we have, internet and Wi-Fi's and computer systems and, as long as the world doesn't end with EMP strikes, then those things should be around and accessible. But what we're talking about is if something like that does happen, if the Muslims decide that Muhammad didn't have electricity, so no one will, and they turn it all off, then where will you get this information? And this is what started our conversation about this and where you go. And this is why we've been doing this series, I think, anyway.
That is it in part. Certainly we can use the internet for as long as we're able, and then I know that I save my shows to CD, to DVD once in a while, and just to make sure that they're preserved in that way. And I think other people who host their own podcasts should do the same thing. If nothing else, the DVD can be copied and shared out. But what the series does, what the Way Back does, whether it's in a series or you listen to the whole bloody thing, the whole 34 minutes of it, is it points out that if the internet is somehow shut off to people like us, that isn't the end of the story, and it doesn't have to be the end of the story. We can continue on with other ways, other means, other methods, and the message can be brought forth, and it will be. But, of course, for now, while we have this resource, we'll use it as much as possible and clue in as many people as we possibly can to how to do these things, because it's important to do that. Right?
Yeah, exactly. That's why I'm trying to create underground professors and professorettes.
Well, there you go.
Yes, sir.
And I'm not, I'm not trying to create unpleasant blind guys because, my blindness is hereditary, so I decided on not doing that myself. But certainly, if I can, I want to create people who question everything, including me.
Exactly.
I want to create critical thinkers because our society is certainly not doing that. Our society is creating people who think the way that society tells them to, and if they deviate from that, then they're called haters or racist or Islamophobes or whatever new buzzword that the political elites can have their social scientists come up with to make a person feel bad that they're actually questioning the government or the media or anything else.
Yes. The Way Back, I think, is absolutely well named, and it's sad because you would think, Agador, we see the writing on the wall, we see what's coming, and it would seem to me so much easier to save it than to have to rebuild it and recreate it. But
yes.
It really doesn't turn out that way, does it?
No, it doesn't. And I'll tell you something. I'll give you the genesis of the title of it. There was a science fiction program in the late 1970s in the UK called Blake 7, and the first episode of that was called The Way Back. And very briefly, it was about a man who was a revolutionary. Who was fighting against a repressive government, oddly enough, called the Federation, and he was convicted not of political crimes, but he was convicted of child molestation, and he was sent off to a prison planet, and at the end of and of course the thing is entitled The Way Back, but at the end of this first episode. He's looking out a porthole at the Earth shrinking away, and a guard comes along and says, "Take a good look at it. That's the last you'll see of Earth." And Blake looks at the guy and says, "No, I'm coming back." So that's the genesis of the title.
I think I've heard that show. What's the name of it again?
Blake's 7. It only got a bit of play over here on PBS stations. It was, there were the same complaints about it that there were about the old Doctor Who, cheesy special effects and all that stuff.
Right.
But the storylines were pretty good. And I never forgot the title of the original, first Blake's 7 episode. And when I began thinking about all of this, encapsulating it all into something that I would like to see, into a return to a time when the people ran the government instead of the other way around. Well, how the heck do we do that? How the heck do we get to, let's say, 1960 America, only this time without, the racial BS, where black people are ostracized from certain places and all the other, indignities and iniquities. How do we get to that point? How do we get back to that? And that's when the title of that particular show came to me. How do we find the way back? So there we are. And I think, I hope at least that I've given it a start. And as I got to say again, Prof. I've said it before, but it bears saying again since we've got 15 minutes left here. That I appreciate your spending all the time on your great show, kind of throwing in your thoughts, which have been really valuable, and have just enhanced the whole thing. and I'll be doing this. I'll say this now. I'll pick someone each year, and if who's doing a podcast, and if they want to do this, then I'll go to their show each year, and we'll talk about this. To kind of enhance it, and they can add their ideas just as you've added your ideas, and their audiences, just like your audience, can consider all this and maybe begin making preparations of their own.
Yeah, that would be good. Or letting us know the things they would include in a what do they call those things when they stick them in the ground? A time vault.
Yeah, time vault, time capsule, Liberty box, freedom box, whatever you want to call it.
There you go, Liberty box. I think we can call it here at. Yep.
There you go.
Former resistance leader Raj Blake witnesses a massacre and is subsequently framed for a series of fictional crimes by a totalitarian federation. The Way Back.
There you go. That's it. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Go ahead.
Oh no! I was waiting for you.
Oh, I was just reading a comment in the. I pointed out that Ken was the size he was because he ate his twin in the womb, and Cal was commenting on that.
Oh,
okay. I was thinking more of the concept like from the Venture Brothers, though.
Oh, okay.
But yes,
it's odd. Well, Dr. Venture just kind of creates those every time they fall apart. But I think you stumbled onto the secret as to why Ken is so smart. Because he has two people's intellects inside there.
Right. Well, Dr. Rusty Venture was a twin, and he ate most of the other ones. So, yeah.
Right.
But yep, that's why he's smart. But, well, there you go. That's our Way Back series, and I encourage other hosts. I'm sorry, it's very distracting, but Dog has Mandy Sue trapped under a chair in their plane, and I'm always nervous. Yes, you're a good dog.
I'll tell you this, Prof. While you're sorting out the dogs, the whole 34-minute The Way Back, as I'm going to present it from now on, at least in long form, is now available on the Unpleasant Blind Guy YouTube page. That's not the SHR Media one. This is my own YouTube page. And if people want to go up there and get that, they can. I encourage them to download it and share it. And yes, if you use it on a show, I'd appreciate proper credit. But but spreading it is the most important thing. So please do that if you would like to do it.
Yes, highly encourage that. Any feedback, your own thoughts? If you want to do this, you want to get on, you want to add on, or you're a host and you want Agador or me or both to come on your show and talk about it, then we are both willing, I'm sure.
Oh, I appreciate that, Prof. Really do.
And start lining up to be the one that gets it next year. So, there you go. Any parting thoughts you want to do on that? Summations?
Well, the only parting thought that I have is that I appreciate everyone that is spreading it around and will spread it around. The people that listen to my stuff mean a lot to me. But this message, frankly, if I were to get run over by a bus tomorrow, this would be the one thing that I would want people to remember, to remember me for as long as anybody remembers me. And even if they stop remembering me, they should remember the message. And I appreciate I appreciate it, Prof. Thank you very much. And very sad. I'm very sad, I have to say that the Cowboys lost tonight to the Patriots.
Thanks. I haven't finished watching the game.
Oh, sorry about that. Well, hey, I didn't know that you didn't have a TV going in the background.
DVR. Yeah, I can't do that. Too many other things I'm looking at.
But there's still the Rangers game. So we can you can still tune in and watch the Blue Jays lose. So
yeah, I'm going to go watch me a Longmire and eat dinner.
There you go. But those really are my thoughts, and I think if I can manage it, if this is what God has planned for me, I may do something fun next week, because this has been a pretty heavy series, and it might be time for a little bit of fun. And with that, Prof, I think I'll turn it back to you. And thanks again.
All right. Kel says, way to go, Agadorable.
Thank you, EBA. I so appreciate it.
Yes. How is G-Ski doing?
Now, Sue from New Mexico reports that G-Ski is doing fine. She spoke with him a few days ago, and he seems to be fine. And he very much appreciates everybody's prayers and thoughts on his behalf. He's working on his music right now with his son, and of course, he puts out some very good hip hop, and a lot of times that has a little message in it. And I can't wait to hear his stuff. So G-Ski, if you're listening out there, bro, we're thinking about you. God love, and hey. Start sharing the love, man. You guys get some tracks done. Do share.
Yeah, we'll play them. Especially when
Absolutely.
Mary's not here. We can play rap when Mary's not here.
That we can.
Yeah, I've noticed there's a lot more Christian rap out there, growing and growing as a medium. The audience is receptive to it. So
there you go.
There are all kinds of ways of doing this, but there is a rapper out there that's been giving Obama hell, I have that somewhere on some tab somewhere. I will find that and try and add that to tomorrow's show.
Very cool. Yeah,
of course,
that's cool.
We've got our
Well,
Columbus
G-Ski,
Day special tomorrow. What's that?
Yeah. Oh no, go ahead. I was just going to say there's G-Ski, there's High Caliber, there's several good ones, and that's another way to teach, by the way. But go ahead, Prof.
Yes. We're having, of course, our show tomorrow. We'll be doing a little Columbus Day show. We got some revisions to make. I got to admit to a mistake I made, and we will correct it, and then augment that. And what else did we? Oh yeah, I'll try and find that rap thing on Obama. Tonight there's a 60 Minutes deal. Holger brought it up that it's a show on how a news show that does exposés on crooked politicians managed to go 7 years without a single news story about Obama's corruption. But yes, but tonight they're interviewing Obama, and I'm not watching. I love my audience, but I don't love them enough to watch that. So you want to know about it, you have to go watch it yourself, because I have no desire to go watch a love fest between the progressives at 60 Minutes, the status there, and the president himself. What else do we have? I can't think of anything else that's news-wise I need to update you on. So I guess we'll leave it at that. Okay, and so that's it. Agador stuff you can get on YouTube, the Unpleasant Blind Guy. You can find his stuff at Pundit Press, and where else, Ag?
Well, that's again, YouTube, Pundit Press, the SHR Media YouTube page as well, and I'm thinking about expanding out to other media. So just stand by for action as always. And thank you, Prof.
Yes, sir. Everybody, that is the Unpleasant Blind Guy, UPG, not to be misunderstood for the Underground Professor, UGP, which I quite often transpose and do wrong. Thank you, everybody, for your compliments and comments in the chat rooms and on Periscope as well. And so, yes, there you go. I guess that sums everything up. And you're not going to want to miss any of the shows next week. As long as I don't miss them, you're not going to want to miss them. I think you're going to find some neat stuff. I'm going to be hitting the Constitution from other perspectives. That'll primarily be the shows on Tuesday and Thursday, Friday are the themes for those shows. So there you go. I think you're going to find these to be really neat. I don't know how to explain it without allowing you to get ahead of me, and I don't want you to go get ahead of me on these. I want it to lay it out so that you can see it and then get your reactions to it at the time. But it will be constitutional, but not the Constitution. We'll be looking at it from other perspectives, from external perspectives, if you will. And I guess that's that. I will say good night and see everybody here tomorrow, Monday, 7 p.m. Central Texas time. And I guess I think that's everything. So with this, I'll boogie woogie out of here.
Man from out Chicago way. He had a boogie style that no one else could play. He was the top man at his class. But then his number came up and he was gone with the draft. He's in the army now, a blowing reveille. He's the boogie woogie bugle boy of Company B. They made him blow a bugle for his Uncle Sam. It really brought him down because he couldn't jam. The captain seemed to understand. Because the next day the cap went out and drafted a band. And now the company jumps when he plays reveille. He's the boogie woogie bugle boy of Company B. A toot, a toot, a toot-a-toot, he blows it eight to the bar. In boogie rhythm, he can't blow a note unless the bass and guitar is playing with him. He makes the company jump when he plays reveille. He's the boogie woogie bugle boy of Company B. He was the boogie woogie bugle boy of Company B. And when he played boogie woogie bugle, he was busy as a blues bee. And when he plays, he makes the company jump eight to the bar. He's the boogie woogie bugle boy of Company B. Toot 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 da toot da toot toot. He blows it eight to the bar. You can't blow a note if the bass and guitar isn't with on. The company jumps when he plays reveille. He's the boogie woogie bugle boy of Company B. He puts the boys to sleep with boogie every night and wakes them up the same way in the early bright. They clap their hands and stamp their feet because they know how he plays. When someone gives him a beat, he really breaks it up when he plays reveille. He's the boogie woogie bugle boy of Company B.
Those were the Boogie Woogie Boys, Agador and the Underground Professor, both sitting high atop a double rainbow, gaily swinging our feet over the Hermitage of North Texas's liberal conservative studies. This has been copyrighted in the year of your Lord 2015, and we will see everybody here tomorrow. Via Con Carne for the Agadorable fans, and Via Con Toodles for mine.